This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
We're talking about marquee forwards, and there is a link. And there's always a link. And he is an ex-Arsenal player who has been speaking about us recently. And, fans have got a little bit excited. And reports have claimed that, he might be available for a sale as Bayern are trying to start a rebuild. You've got Leroy Sané, you've got Sadio Mane, and you've got Serge Gnabry, who has scored, I believe, 14 goals this season, 22 starts. So he was going to start a week in, week out, but scored some very vital goals towards the end of the season. He did sign a new contract last summer until 2026 before being linked to an Arsenal transfer. And it looks like he might be available. So if he is available, having played a lot of his minutes on the right-hand side, he's got the ball strike and he's got the Champions League experience. Alex, is it possible, or should Arsenal make it happen?
We're entering that period of the window, aren't we? Where just any player gets linked and we're like, yeah, get him in. Look, I think, again, we have to look at priorities and we have to look at what's the most pressing issue. Using the house metaphor again, we've got a leak upstairs. The doors aren't quite working. We're trying to get a flat screen TV. Look, Gnabry would be lovely. Again, not love the player. All the things you can say about him in terms of coming home to Arsenal and all that sort of stuff. And it's quite a romantic idea. And I like that. I'm into that as well. And if it happens, great. Gnabry is not going to want to come back to Arsenal and sit on the bench. So you're sacrificing one of Saka or Martinelli starting those big games. I can't see that happening. Secondly, you're going to have to spend a lot of budget on that, probably. Bayern in a position of strength. This is something that Arsenal, why I want to see our sales improve this summer, because we've got ourselves to a position of strength. Bayern have been in that position. They've won the league, 400 times in the last 10 years or whatever it is. So I would love it. I just think there's bigger priorities. If it comes to the end of the window and we've got everything we need to done. We've gone through the checklist and gone, right, we've evolved the midfield, whether it's one or two. We've dealt with some sales, that sort of stuff. And it comes to a point where we have a bit of spare budget and we think, right, how do we get to that next level? I think there's always, talent is talent. And if you think that guy is the right guy, go for it. And, let the pathways sort themselves out. I'm always keen on if there's someone better than Saka, replace him. I know it sounds harsh, but there isn't currently for what we need. So I just think I can't see why we do it. It feels like there's a number of players every single window, and what I really think this is, there's a number of players every single window who get linked to certain clubs. Like the Havertz Madrid thing right now, the Gnabry thing. There's players who are always linked to Liverpool every single summer. It just all feels like agent contracts, that sort of stuff. It's just that time of the season where, you could go to Arsenal, give me an extra 10 grand on my new contract. I don't buy it, and it's not anywhere credible, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. We talked about, obviously, in terms of Arsenal maybe not having the funds or it not being our priority, right? But the way I look at it, in a sense of not just Gnabry, but something that I think Arsenal could do more often is loans with options. I don't see enough for Arsenal. I see a lot of other clubs utilise that when they have a loan with the option to buy and obviously save the funds for later. Arsenal often just go for the release clause and they'll just lose all composure, or they'll sign the player like that. I think there are, if we can negotiate better, there are some decent loan options. For example, you look at Kulusevski as a loan with the option to buy, and look how, he's a top player that, could work out for the future. I can't remember the last time Arsenal had a loan with an option to buy, unless there's someone I'm forgetting here. Odegaard wasn't an option to buy, of course. But in the case of Serge Gnabry, George, is he someone that you believe could maybe displace Bukayo Saka?
Bukayo Saka, no. I mean, I think that what he offers is an analog to Saka in a wing pairing. When I look at my wingers, I typically look at either you're in that kind of creative 10 mold, or somebody that is able to kind of interchange in close combination, or you're more of a touchline winger that's more of an explosive outlet. Those are the two groups of wingers, and we've got that really in Martinelli and Bukayo Saka, right? And I think that's a really nice complementary symmetry. When you've got too much of the same on both sides, it makes it easier as a coach and kind of as an opposition to really navigate kind of a press against you. It makes it a little bit easier to defend against when you know the type of player and you're not asking different questions. Now, look, I think Serge Gnabry is somebody that I was definitely very vocal on potentially looking at, about a year ago. And I think it was more to do with kind of the situation that he was looking to leave Bayern for relatively low fee. It's something that I will look at. I think that Serge Gnabry would offer a level of output that a marquee forward would deserve. Is he kind of a contract sense a good choice with what we're doing right now in our salary cap? I don't know. I don't think he would request less than £300,000 a week. So that's something that you have to consider, especially when you've just signed Bukayo Saka. You're in negotiations with William Saliba, who I'm sure we'll talk about later, in that 200 bracket. Saying that you're going to go for a Serge Gnabry at the 300 level, it is opening problems. I don't think that's an issue when, you're winning. But do I think that, he's worth basically cutting out the budget for the second midfielder for? That's more of a debate, I think. And, I don't know if that's something that I agree with Granit Xhaka gone. I could maybe see the logic if Granit Xhaka stayed and you still recruited a Declan Rice, and now you've got Declan Rice, Granit Xhaka, Thomas Partey. The midfield seems okay. I still would look to the future, the following window, but at least there's bodies there. There's backup there. That's fine. Then you can maybe look towards a Serge Gnabry. Look, I think there's just a couple things with Serge that I don't know if I love. I think he's better off the left, personally, than he is off the right. So even though that he could have cover on the right with Bukayo Saka, I do think that he's a little bit more potent off the left. Which works for me. I do think that as a left winger is something that you could maybe look at as a marquee as well as a striker. I just don't know if Serge Gnabry is worth the second midfielder with Granit Xhaka gone, essentially, right now. I think that puts more strain in the squad to address the midfield, and I may look towards a Serge Gnabry type next summer, or even another striker. I'm very open towards that forward marquee. I think we've talked about it before. It really depends on where you see Martinelli best. If you see Martinelli best as continuing in the current role at left wing, you're probably more amenable to a striker. If you see a little bit like me, who I've talked about on Twitter, I look at Martinelli very much like a Luis Suarez kind of vibe. That was the first comparison I've ever made when I watched kind of Martinelli. And because of that, I see a left wing as maybe something I would maybe prefer if I was talking marquee forwards. But again, just depends on where you see him best and then supplementing that. I just don't know if Serge Gnabry makes a lot of salary sense, if he makes a lot of sense in the press as well. There's no denying his potential output. He's got phenomenal ball striking. He would immediately be probably the most potent player in the squad, and he would give you that clinical edge. He would. Does he work in a press, though? Like, is he able to really, kind of do some of the Jesus things? Because you're removing Jesus or you're removing Martinelli. You're removing one of the two to make him fit, right? And does he give you enough goals that you don't care that the press and kind of our current way of playing is removed a bit? That I'm not too sure. I have a little bit of question marks for. So if you're asking me to get off the fence and pick a decision, I don't know if I'm looking towards Serge Gnabry this summer. Maybe next summer, but I think the midfield is the more urgent priority.
So still on the fence then, huh?
It's a career mode
Still on
signing.
defense.
It's a career mode
Yes.
signing.
No, what I think this has opened the question up. If it's not just Gnabry in a sense, but if we're going to sign a forward, which looks like Arsenal are trying to do, is it better to sign an out-and-out Saka analog, or is it maybe better to maybe sign a striker, a different profile, like a more of a physical target man, and allow for Jesus to also replicate Saka out wide, which we've seen Jesus do in the final day of the season. He can play out wide. He's done it for Man City to a high standard as well. What do you guys think Arsenal need more in terms of forwards? Is it more of a centre forward, or is an out-and-out Saka replacement, Alex?
Well, we saw what we tried to do in January was get a left-sided player, which sounds like maybe Martinelli was, that there's certainly a pathway there where Martinelli moves inside. I've always been, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I've always been of the opinion that we're going to get that Haaland, Kane, Osman profile. I would be interested in taking a punt this summer and going for perhaps a young, unproven player. I watched... because I was in Rome recently, I watched Tammy Abraham play. There's something there, and I'm not suggesting Tammy Abraham is the guy, but for a year or two alone or something like that,
He's injured.
I know, and now he's done his ACL, so that sort of puts paid to that. But something in that sort of profile, someone who offers a very different type of striker, I'm always keen on. I just think there's games this season where we've looked at the bench and we haven't had enough to change our way of approaching the final third. It's about the build up. I think largely in terms of can adapt in terms of the numbers, whether it's a 2-3, 3-2, 2-4, whatever you want to do. But the way we approach the box, I think can get a little bit stale. And I'd love to see a different thing. Just being able to just have someone in the half space, just knocking balls in, it just pushes that line back a little bit further, allows you a little bit of space on the edge of the box, all that sort of stuff. So personally, I'd do that. I would see if there's someone out there who is in that sort of mold, a target man type forward, probably young or old, or someone who's in their sort of late, maybe even early 30s, possibly, as a different option who isn't expecting to start every game. But that's not what Mikel was trying to do in January. So who knows?
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.